Blessings, everyone, and thank you for tuning into my weekly IG Live conversations, aptly entitled Lifting the Veil. We try to lift the veil so that people can begin to see things that normally perhaps they don't know about or can't see. I originally had that particular title because I was teaching this year that we're in an apocalyptic moment. An apocalypse, one of the meanings of the apocalypse is the lifting of the veil, where that which was hidden can now be seen. So we're in such a moment now in human history on so many different levels. The double pandemic of scourge of insane racism, as well as the COVID-19 and all the ramifications of that on people. So the veil is being lifted, and we've been having some wonderful conversations. I'm going to call forth into my IG Live now Martin Luther King III and Andrea Waters King. They're a husband and wife. As you know, Martin Luther King III is the eldest son of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. He serves as an ambassador of his parents' legacy of nonviolent social change, founded realizing the dream which focused on redressing poverty by strategizing with community organizers to ignite investment in local neighborhoods and foster peaceful coexistence within the U.S. and internationally. He was a former member of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners in Georgia, where he successfully lobbied to have the Confederate flag removed. Former president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which his dad co-founded. Former president and CEO of the King Center in Atlanta. Currently serves on the board of the Drum Major Instinct. One of the greatest talks Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ever gave was the Drum Major Instinct, which was co-founded by his father in 1961 and is dedicated to fostering a culture of nonviolence and active participation in our democracy. Andrea Waters King has spent her life living her commitment to social justice by consistently supporting those who have been marginalized and silenced and collectively to use their voice for change. Worked with the Center for Democratic Renewal, which she organized the first national conference on hate crimes and hate violence. She played a key role in the mobilization for the Georgia Hate Crimes Act and prepared major reports, including the landmark When Hate Comes to Town. She has also helped organize marches and rallies that led to the rebuilding of the major multiracial coalition, the Southern Coalition Against Racism and Bigotry. These individuals have been busy. Andrea and her husband are currently developing the Martin Luther King III Partnership for Equity, Peace, and Justice. We're going to bring them on right now. So you have time to tell your peoples to come on and tune in. And obviously, this will be recorded, and you will be able to come back to my Instagram Live or tell your friends about it, and they can come listen to it. What we can't complete on the Instagram, we're going to put on my app. So there'll be a bonus conversation on the app, and I'll tell you about that in just a little bit. But right now, we are searching for Martin Luther King III and his wife, Andrea. And they should be popping up here shortly. Technology is just an interesting kind of thing. It's saying for some reason, if you can hear me, Martin, say that you're able to join, but now I think you're joining. So technology is sometimes a little bit slow, but I think you've heard me read their bios, and they're also good friends of mine, and they are virtual members of the Agape International Spiritual Community, tuning in on Sundays, like many of you do. For those of you who don't know, Agape, that was inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As a kid, hear those speech about unconditional love, about agape love being the highest form of love in the Greek language, it penetrated my bones. And so before I started Agape, I had something called Agape Transformationals, which was a combination of Dr. King's inspiration and Malcolm X's inspiration of how he transformed life. There they are, the married team, Andrea and Martin.
How are you?
I am good. Let me see how are we all fitting? Are we all good here?
I think we are.
We're good to go.
Some camera adjustments. There you go. Hey, good to see you guys.
Always good to see and be with you, and we thank God for just the opportunity to really share today in whatever way the universe and spirit leads us.
It's always good to be with you and with the Agape community.
And you guys still tune in on Sundays?
Absolutely.
It's a date. We're always, yes, we do. Yep, from Atlanta or wherever we happen to be.
But mostly it's been Atlanta here for the last few months.
It's been busy. Hey, listen, does Yolanda tune in as well?
Absolutely.
Yes, she does.
Yes, she does.
Beautiful.
And in our home, not only do we tune in on Sunday, we find that we love the streaming archives, and it's always good and edifying for us throughout the week to revisit, as we are just in the kitchen, whether we're cooking, taking our vitamins, to have that service again in our home, in our atmosphere. We play it a couple of times throughout.
Sometimes 3.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that a lot from people. I was just listening to a woman who wrote me and said the same thing, that she listens to it at least 3 times during the week and then waits for the next one on Sunday. But those 3 times kind of carry her through with all of the intensity that we're living through right now. She said it was kind of her life. So listen, I wanted to talk to you, Andrea. First of all, you had a long-time relationship and worked with the Honorable John Lewis, who we just had that beautiful memorial service. And what was that? What kind of work were you doing with him, and what did you garner from being around him?
Well, actually, the work I did was with the Reverend CT Vivian, who passed away the same day as John Lewis. And CT Vivian.
CT Vivian.
Yes.
Vivian, yes, CT Vivian,
yes.
Right.
And the work that I did under his leadership was, I worked for an organization called the Center for Democratic Renewal, which it was formerly known as the National Anti-Klan Network. And what we would do is monitor hate groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, skinheads, so on and so forth. But we also would go into communities and help communities organize, particularly communities that have been impacted by these hate groups and hate violence. So I worked on both sides. I worked with monitoring the groups, but I also worked a lot with going into communities and helping communities organize when hate violence had happened, or, we worked with Matthew Shepard's family. We went to Pearl, Mississippi, when a young Black man was found hanging in his front yard, who had been dating a white young lady. We worked on the Black church burnings in South Carolina, and numerous other communities that did not make the news.
Right. Now, give the folks a little bit of understanding.
Dr. Vivian. And Dr. Vivian.
Yeah. I want you to say
Dr.
a little bit
Vivian,
who Vivian was. Yeah.
He was an extraordinary human being. He was actually instrumental in a lot of Martin's father's campaign, but in particular Selma. And I would encourage anyone listening, once we finish this live stream, to search CT Vivian, and search in particular CT Vivian in Selma, Alabama. And there's footage of him going into the courthouse, or attempting to go into the courthouse there are, I think, about 20 Black people with him that lived in Selma, and they were attempting to vote. And on this particular day, the sheriff met them at the front of the courthouse, would not allow them in front of the cameras, literally took his club and beat CT Vivian. But what's most extraordinary about that footage is CT immediately stands up and just gives the most impromptu, beautiful speech, one of the most beautiful speeches I've ever heard. That was one of the things he did. He also was involved with the Nashville sit-in movement. He also was involved with integrating beaches in Florida. And of course, he worked closely with Martin's father throughout the years. And as his lifespan shows, he never stopped. I mean, I worked with him in the late 90s to the early 2000s, and this organization had started in the 80s. So he was a continual giant, beautiful spirit, one of the most courageous human beings that I've ever come across. And I just loved spending time with him and talking to him literally, at his feet. Also on our board, interestingly enough, at that time was a lady named Ann Braden. And I bring her name up as well because it's important for all of us to know our history and those who have sacrificed tremendously for where we are today. And Ann Braden is a white Southerner. So in particular, I think there's a lot of right now conversations amongst, white allies about, their place or the place as we are in this new movement. And Ann Braden and her husband in the 1950s in Louisville, Kentucky, helped a Black family to buy a home. And they were ostracized. They weren't able to get jobs. They basically were, just the outpouring, the negative outpouring that they received from that, and the tremendous sacrifice. But the interesting thing about Ann, if you talk to her and she would, she had a good whiskey in her hand and she would say that she never regretted that decision. But those are two people that I would, those are two that I would certainly encourage everybody to look up after we get off of this, and hopefully to be inspired. Because the thing about these stories is for inspiration and to find ourselves in these stories. They're not just for the history books. They're guideposts for all of us now as we continue to take our journeys in the expansion of freedom.
Absolutely. Because as they find themselves in those individuals, there's a lot of work for us to do right this moment.
Absolutely.
And so, like you say, this is not history. This is an unfolding of justice, an unfolding of peace, an unfolding of nonviolence, an unfolding of actually being architects and builders of the beloved community. And that's happening now. And
yes,
so CT Vivian, and I knew CT, and I had him speak at Agape a couple of times, and we would hang out, and I would go to Morehouse at times and speak there. We would hang out. But he lived 95 powerful years.
Yes.
As he said, and never relented in the fight for justice. And so it's a powerful thing to think about an individual's life and that kind of commitment.
Absolutely.
Now, both of you, I'll throw this off to Martin first, but with everything going on in the world right now, we have obviously everything that has happened the past number of months. Would you consider yourself optimistic about what's happening in the world and the birthing of the beloved community? How do you hold the radical tension about the systemic racism, the death of George Floyd and others, and everything that's happening now with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, changing of policy? There's so much swirling around. How do you hold this in yourself now?
So number one, I always try to view things through a prism that is positive, because it's easy to get caught up in negative rhetoric, particularly if one is a connoisseur of mainstream or any kind of news, because often the little stories, the victories that are happening all the time are rarely shared. And so you have to be first of all, I think your foundation can be shattered, but it's important to have and find ways to sustain through edifying, things that you look at, things that you read, to fortify yourself from that which might be perceived as negative. But I'm very optimistic about the potential that can and will come in our nation and in our world. Maybe we're going through a metamorphosis. And what I mean by that is you can look at an example of various types of animals or insects. I mean, for example, a butterfly starts off as a caterpillar, and a caterpillar looks one way and is an interesting insect. But when it goes through that metamorphosis, it's very painful, probably, it appears to be. And if you jump in and try to change that trajectory as that butterfly is attempting to come out of that cocoon, it interrupts and ruins it. It has to go through a certain process. And then when it actually arrives, it's a beautiful creature, one of the most beautiful, one of most God's beautiful creatures. So to some degree, maybe we're going through some kind of metamorphosis as a society. And at the other end, it will be phenomenal changes. And the fact is that whether it's demonstrations that we see really all over the world,
Yes.
These are the largest civil rights demonstrations that we've ever experienced in our lives. We have never seen this level. And I mean, I read the other day about a group of people. Now, the strategy was interesting. That went into a little small town called Zinc, Arkansas, and they confronted the head of the Klan. I don't know if he was of a region or, it was very interesting. Most of the demonstrators were white, but there were blacks. And of course, the people in that town, they had their guns, but it ended up being a peaceful confrontation. I don't know if they ever made it to the Supreme Leader's home, but the fact of the matter is whites and blacks were confronting and talking, saying, look, we need the dialogue because it's a nation for all of us. And you may disagree, but the fact of the matter is we have to find ways to coexist. That could have erupted into violence, but it didn't. And I just think that I've never known people to go and confront a Klansman who is maybe a significant leader at his home and do it in a nonviolent way. And so we are seeing all kinds of little incidents. There are incidents in small towns in Iowa and other places where you have Black Lives Matter demonstrations that are basically white people leading them. So clearly there's something in the consciousness of our nation that did not exist prior to the tragic death of George Floyd, that people have the propensity to identify that which is wrong and say, we cannot accept this. We are better than this. So from my vantage point, there's still a lot of work to do, but we have the potential to engage in a very significant way and transform our nation and ultimately transform our world. Because again, these demonstrations are going on in Australia, they're going on in Europe, they're going on in South America, they're going in the African continent. So everywhere, just about everywhere we know of, just about, there have been demonstrations. And I don't believe the young people, these are being led, by the way, many of them by young people. I don't think they're going to stop. I don't see, until justice and equality and righteousness occurs for all humankind, I don't see that stopping.
Right, I agree. I don't see it abating either. I was driving down Wilshire Boulevard a couple of weeks ago, and I saw the Black Lives Matter march going down the street, the signs, kids on skateboards and bicycles and skates, and there was some elderly folks as well. And it was 3/4 white walking down Wilshire Boulevard, and they were articulating the fact that Black people had been marginalized for so long. I mean, they had their points very well put together. They were very articulate. It wasn't just screaming, you know what I mean? And they had pamphlets, and I was just sitting in my car looking at it. And of course, I, supported them. But I'm saying, wow, these people are mainly white, young, on skateboards, speaking for the marginalized people on the planet.
If you want another awesome video in our Black Excellence series, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.